Welcome to episode number 1 of PluggedInRadio.com. You can find us, obviously, at PluggedInRadio.com. This is a new podcast put on by the Matt Report Network, the global, massive Matt Report WordPress network. If you're looking for WordPress entrepreneurial talk, that's not going to happen on this show, but that will still continue to happen over at mattreport.com, so you can check that out as well. But this podcast is all about bringing on authors or creators of plugins and services within the WordPress ecosystem, and probably sort of outside the ecosystem too, as we roll along here, and bring them on to talk about their products, why they built it, who it's for, and even demo their products for us. And who better to join me on episode 1 than my good buddy, Tom McFarlin. Tom, welcome to the program, sir.
Hey, man. Thank you. I can think of a lot of people that might be better to bring into the first episode, but I'm going to argue with this opportunity.
No, you're a crowd favorite here. You've been running a company for a little while now. It's called Pressware. And you recently dropped in a plugin called Easier Excerpts into the WordPress repo. You got a bunch of other stuff happening in the back, behind the scenes that I'm excited to learn about. But for folks who have not heard of you before, who are you and what do you do with Pressware?
All right. So as Matt said, my name's Tom McFarlin, and you can find me, the two places you can find me on the web are on Twitter at Tom McFarlin and on my website at tommcfarlin.com. Pressware is the company out of which I operate. It's my own operation, and I do primarily custom solutions for others using WordPress, and that can mean a lot. For some people, they think it means that I design and build themes, and though I have done theme integrations, the majority of my work is actually in doing certain type of custom integrations, and oftentimes that comes in the form of building custom plugins. So my background's in computer science and in software engineering, so I really enjoy solving problems for other people using those types of approaches, and plugins are kind of the vehicle in which I'm able to do that. So there's also some things on the side, consulting and code reviews, but the bulk of what I've been doing really for the past 2 years, that is, if you were to look at if I were to open my books and say, here's what the business looks like, it is largely plugin development. And I could get technical about that, but for the sake of keeping this directly all about plugins and plugin radio, I'm not going to worry about the technical side of it.
That's awesome. So today we're going to talk about your plugin called Easier Excerpts, and I'm going to switch the scene over to that, and you do have the keys to the vehicle at this point. So Easier Excerpts automatically changes the size of the excerpt field to fit the length of your content. Let's talk about why that's important and who is this plugin for?
So why it's important is largely based on, in my opinion, the type of blogger that you are. So backing up even further than that, if you are a regular blogger, and by that you're someone who publishes maybe daily, maybe 3 times a week, or maybe just once a week, the odds are you have a methodology in place. And so you've got a way that you draft your post, whether or not you include featured images, how you organize your categories, and then perhaps even how you publish or send your post to those who are subscribed to you via a mailing list, RSS, things like that. And the whole idea behind Easier Excerpts, and some of the stuff that we'll talk about a little bit later in this podcast, simply came out of a slight level of frustration that I had with the native WordPress excerpt field. And that is, for anyone who's ever used it, you know that you write your post title, you write your content, and then you hop down to the excerpts and you start typing away, or maybe you're going to paste some content in there from the post as like a teaser, and the excerpt field doesn't change. You have to scroll, it's small as it is, and you have to scroll, you have to adjust. Maybe if you're using a browser like Chrome or Safari, you have the luxury of dragging the box to be as large as you want. But I wanted a way, personally for me, as part of my blogging process, to go down this list of things that I do every single day that I blog and populate that excerpt field very easily, and be able to see all the content that's going to be part of that excerpt that will also be part of the newsletter that is sent to those people who subscribe via the news. And that way I can see basically exactly how it's going to look in their inbox. I don't have to scroll. I can make any adjustments as needed. It's this very simple plugin, and I'm completely fine with that. But the point of it is that it was a way for me to streamline something I was doing every day that was causing me a bit of frustration.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, you are the daily blogger, right? Or I mean, just about every day to a degree. So, I mean, these are things that, for somebody who might be blogging once a month, or if you're a business and you're really trying to get out there and blog once a month, because I know it is difficult. Once you start doing it more often, this stuff becomes kind of a pain.
Yes, it does. And I think that eventually for those who do, like you're mentioning, those who do get to have a little bit more regularity about it, you develop this flow of, okay, I'm going to, like, some people might start with, hey, I'm going to start with these keywords and craft a post around that. Or maybe I've got this title, or I've got, if you're a more academic type, I've got this thesis or this argument. And whatever it is, whatever your approach is, you're going to almost innately create a process around how you draft your blog posts. And just like everyone else who does this, I have one, and Excerpts happen to be part of that.
Sure. And as content marketing becomes more popular in the business landscape, and businesses are hiring people simply to blog and create content for them, these types of systems get created where they say, number one, create the blog post, number two, create the titles, and then they might make these sort of other systems where they instruct a writer to go in and fill out the Yoast section, make sure the excerpt is filled out, right? Like, do all these different things that are in like some kind of PDF format, because a lot of writers being onboarded really haven't even touched WordPress before, right? So if somebody's building a system for somebody, these things are important. Having something like this can potentially solve the support load of that, right? Like, why can't, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, I'm trying to fill out the excerpt field and it's just, I can't figure out why. I can't see the rest of it. So something like this can solve it.
And I will add to that if you use any type of, well, I won't say any, because not all newsletter plugins are the same, but if you have a newsletter plugin that will use the excerpt as kind of a teaser and say, hey, if you want to read more, it'll show the excerpt in someone's inbox and it'll say, if you want to read more, click here. Then the excerpt is your one chance. It's like the elevator pitch of your blog. Do you want to read more? Yep. And so the importance of the excerpt varies based on how people read your content. And for me, I know that I have people reading it via their inbox.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at it, right? So I've already installed it on a base install of WordPress. And forgive anybody who's watching this. This is the first time that I've actually done this, right? So not only recording this screen, we are actually recording a go-to meeting at the same time. So hopefully there's no technical hurdles. But Tom does have control of keyboard and mouse, and he's going to just kind of walk us through a use case for this plugin.
Yes, and so for those of you who are watching, you notice that I just copied a bunch of text from the WordPress news. That was not me killing time with a cursor. I'll come back to that in just a minute. So let's say that I'm going to go to all posts because I know that there are some posts that have already populated, and I'm going to edit a post. And this is the classic, hey, WordPress, hello world, this is your first post, edit, delete it. And you notice that the excerpt box doesn't appear. Sometimes if you first install WordPress, it won't appear. So if it doesn't, you can select it from your screen options. But there's the excerpt field. That's exactly what it looks like. It's got room for 4 lines of text. You may make a case saying if your excerpt exceeds 4 lines of text, then your excerpt is too long. But again, the way in which people are publishing their content and the way in which people are consuming it is changing a little bit. Secondly, I want to add that this little these lines that you see down here in the corner are actually a function of the browser. It's not a function of WordPress. So yes, you can click and drag and resize the name or the size of your excerpt. But anyway, so let's say that I'm just going to sit here and say, please read me post, as if I'm a pirate. Please read my pirate. Please read my post and my pirate if he's readable. So there's an excerpt. It's great. That would go out, whatever. But let's say I have something a little bit longer. Remember, I copied a clip or I copied a block of text from the dashboard a moment ago from WordPress News. So I'm going to hit paste. And you notice that it grew a little bit, but let's hit enter. And then Easier Excerpts is expanding a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll copy this text just so that we can get a little bit more in here. And you see that the excerpt field is growing even more. And then say, oh, I don't really like this second paragraph, so I'm going to remove it. Then the excerpt field dynamically changes. And that, in a nutshell, is all the plugin does. Now, when we first launched it, the whole, I was surprised that we got some positive reviews in terms of people either via Twitter or via email saying, hey, this is really cool, I really like this, etc. And it's nice to hear that, especially with something as trivial as this, because I don't want to mince words and say that, oh, this plugin is going to change your life. There are some amazing plugins out there. There are some amazing tools out there, and Matt is going to talk to all of these developers through Plugged In Radio. But
I hope so.
We'll talk about bribery later. But I'm kidding, everyone. But anyway, the biggest thing that I found was that it only, initially, because I'm a fan of having what I call a strong 1.0, I only built it so that it works with posts. But after it was in the wild for a little while, people started to ask, hey, will this work with this post type? Or will this work with any custom post type that I create? And initially, the support for the plugin was not in there. However, if you look at the plugin homepage, you will notice that it's up to version 1.2.1. So that means it's compatible with WordPress 5.1 as of 3 days ago of recording. And it is compatible with the post type, as well as any custom post type that you introduce into your WordPress installation, your theme, or if a plugin introduces it, and if that post type supports excerpts. And this, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this is just the first in a suite of plugins that we're working on. But basically, this was something that was quick and easy to develop. It was something that I had for myself for some time, but I wanted to create it in a more robust manner, and then get feedback from other people before trying to throw too many features into it.
Sure. No, I mean, it's definitely one of those plugins that, I don't want to say you don't even notice, but you don't notice, it doesn't get in the way, right?
Yeah.
It's also, and I know you're a huge proponent on this, when somebody's using a feature of a plugin that you feel like it's sort of just this native experience, you're not presented with, gee, do I have to identify how big do you want your excerpt field, and at what point does it break off, right? You could have all these options in there, but there's no need. It just doesn't get in the way, and you're not having to think about it, right? Which I think is one of the huge benefits. I've got this methodology for selecting plugins that I give out to folks that are new to WordPress, and they say, how do I pick amongst the sea of plugins? Not only at WordPress.org, but when I Google, best plugins, I get directed to all these different marketplaces or locations. How do I pick the plugins? So I've come up with this methodology. It's called Fuse, right? Like plug-in and electric and fuse, and you don't want to break a fuse, that kind of thing. So there's this thing called Fuse. It's fit, usability, support, and ecosystem. Now, one of the things about fit that I like to talk about is if you're a consultant, does it fit with the project? Does it fit with your customer? I don't see a problem with that with Easier Excerpts, because I mean, it's not something that's going to really stop somebody or hinder somebody. It's pretty much a boon to any kind of publishing that they're doing, which is great. Usability, same thing, right? There is this, nothing in the way. It's usable. It's nice. It works. But if you don't
mind me interjecting,
sure.
The whole, I would want people, once they've had it installed, They kind of forget it's there.
Right.
And then when they hop over into a different WordPress installation that doesn't have it, they're like, why? Like something feels a little off. Oh, my excerpt field's not growing, or it's not dynamically changing based on the content. So I'd rather people feel the absence of it than, I don't want to say I don't want them to feel the presence of it, but I want them to recognize when it's not there.
Sure. Yeah. The ecosystem in the word Fuse has a double edge meaning as well. Does the author or company that you're purchasing a plugin have maybe a suite of plugins that sort of complement the plugin that you're already installing or hoping to install? And you mentioned that you might either improve on this and maybe add more functionality, but you also say you have other plugins coming down the pipe. Anything that you can expand upon in that area, either for easier excerpts or for future plugins that you have coming out?
Yeah, I actually don't mind at all. I will tell you that as far as, because part of your Fuse acronym is that there is a level of support that some plugins have and some plugins don't. And while we're looking here at the page, if you go over to support, you'll notice that there is a single post that says support is not offered via this forum. Now, Easier Excerpts itself is at this time a completely free plugin. It's not supported. That doesn't mean we will not listen. And you can find all of this on our website at presswareplugins.com. We have a support policy. If you find bugs, we're happy to hear it. We're happy to be contacted via email. We have an official support channel, all of that. But you don't have to buy anything for this plugin. But the thing is that this one's so simple, it's so straightforward that there should hopefully be no real need for support as long as we keep it updated with WordPress. Now, as far as some of the other plugins that we're working on, I don't know if all of them will actually be available via the WordPress plugin repository or not, because some of the ones that we have in mind are going to be premium. And right now in the WordPress economy, or in the WordPress ecosystem, and sticking with your acronym, people really don't like upsell nags. And if the upsell nags are there, they want them to be done tastefully. And I don't blame them. I'm the same way. So if we put a plugin in the plugin repository that will eventually be, maybe it'll have a premium feature, maybe it will just, if you need support, it's going to be on a plugin to plugin basis. I don't know if it will be in the plugin repository or not. That said, there are a number of different plugins that we're creating. The overall vision for what we're doing with these plugins is not to create tools for developers, and it's not to create tools for designers. The repository and GitHub and all of these online hangouts for your developer types are replete with tools that you can download. And honestly, developers are going to be able to create the things that they need rather than go out and purchase something, unless it's a really massive, like a database migration plugin, for example. So with that said, we're trying to create a suite of tools geared specifically towards bloggers who want to have a better blogging experience. And this is coming from not only myself and my experience with blogging for several years at this point and across a number of different blogs, but also from from a business partner of mine, Eric, who is also a regular blogger. He's not a developer, but he definitely feels the tension, and he feels he has these felt needs of, I wish I could do this easier. I wish I had the opportunity or the ability to do this. And so what we've done is we have a laundry list of plugins, some of which will be developed, some of which won't be, because that's what you do. You keep notes of everything and you build what genuinely will solve a problem. And so what this suite of plugins is going to do is to ultimately help streamline your process. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Whatever your process is, we're all constrained by what WordPress provides: title, editor, categories, tags, excerpts, and then optionally things that other plugins may introduce. This may be custom post types. This may be custom categories or taxonomies, if you're familiar with that term. And then things like maybe Yoast SEO plugin, things like that.
Sure.
And so what we want to do is have a suite of plugins that people can use that will help streamline their process, whatever it is that fits within the constraints of WordPress. And so, for example, years ago, I wrote this, one of the ones that we're working on that is still a little ways out, but one of the ones that we're working on right now is it's based on a plugin that I wrote a few years ago called Single Post Message. And all it does is allows you to put a very simple message or a very simple call to action at the top of your post. It accepts a minimal amount of HTML so that if you wanted to put in a link or an anchor, you can. It doesn't allow you to change the color scheme. It has a maximum length of content, and it only allows you to choose if you want the message to appear above the post or below the post. But we're going to take that. We're going to change it into something that is a little bit more powerful, that is going to have a few more options. And I don't mean that it's going to have everything under the sun that you can, you're not going to be able to change the font. You're not going to be able to throw in a random image. It's not going to allow you to screw up the way that your content looks. It's not there to harsh your flow. It's there to help it. Another one that we're working on is specifically tailored towards the type of bloggers who they do scheduled posts. Maybe it's 3 times a week, maybe it's 5 times a week, maybe it's 7 times a week, maybe it's more. If you guys are writing more than that per week, then fantastic. Here's your blog.
Yeah, I know.
But it will allow you to handle. It'll allow you to access that scheduled content a little bit easier than you can right now. And then ultimately that's going to communicate with another plugin that's way down the roadmap that will allow you to integrate with some third-party services for making sure that it's getting scheduled out across whatever social channels you're involved with. So yeah, sure. There's other plugins out there that do certain things like this. And people always say, and that isn't what I mean to say, people often say, why would I want to use this plugin when there's already one out there that does what I need?
Sure.
I would say don't. But if you're happy, or if you're unhappy, or if you're frustrated with whatever solution that you're using, even if it kind of solves the problem that you have, I want to be able to deliver something that is slightly better, that helps you have a better blogging experience, and that does not get in your way. I'd rather you feel the absence of the plugin when it's not there than you have all of these shiny knobs and colors and fonts and notices showing up above. I mean, just you hop into WordPress and you're like, what are these billboards doing everywhere? Why are there cartoons everywhere? I'm not a fan of that. I don't want that. What I want to do is to add additional tools into WordPress that feel like they're part of WordPress and that help you publish your content out there in a more streamlined fashion.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And a lot of that has to do. I mean, you hit a lot of major points of the Fuse methodology, and fit ends up being one of those. It's the first thing, right? So a plugin that you maybe installed last year, maybe the developer or the company has, like you said, maybe gone and sort of, way over advertised, maybe to their premium version or to upsell to other plugins in their ecosystem. And the plugin that you're using no longer is the right fit, right? It's no longer the right fit for you or a majority of us that I expect to be listening to the show are consultants, right? Or power users becoming consultants, because now they're comfortable with WordPress and they can sort of help other people come online with WordPress. It no longer becomes a fit for them, because it's kind of weird sometimes to sell something to a client, sell your services to a client only to say, hey, this WordPress thing is great, and they're getting, slapped in the face with other upsell ads, and you're like, people feel like, did you just sell me malware to run my website? Like, I don't understand.
That's a good example. Because remember back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you would install something, you launch a browser, and then there's this entirely new toolbar of like a kitchen sink of the weirdest search tools, the weirdest image sites, and other things that are not safe for a podcast or for work to talk about. And you're just like, what? Where did this come from? I thought I just installed. I thought I installed something that allowed me to view a weird, some type of media type in my browser, and then everything's hijacked. No. That is not at all what we're about. And if if I can interject one more thing, one thing that's important to me that so when they announced that we were going to be able to have custom assets, that is your header image, that is your icon for your plugin, things like that. Like right here behind Easier Excerpts, you see the typewriter, you see the Pressware logo, you see an icon representing the excerpts. We are working with a designer. Actually, if you look up on Twitter, House of Grays, she's a fantastic designer. We're working with her. I want the end-to-end experience of our plugins to feel cohesive, not in and of themselves, but in and of the suite that we're developing. So when you notice a certain type of graphic in the plugin repository or in the plugin shop, you're like, that is a Pressware plugin. Because I want it to be as aesthetically pleasing from the moment you decide, hey, do I want to download this, to the moment that you begin using it. And I think it starts with exactly what they see on the screen, be it here in the repository, be it on a single website, being recommended on a blog, or even in the WordPress dashboard where they're searching for plugins.
Yeah, and again, that just hits right on the E of Fuse, the ecosystem, right? Is to sort of have this refined experience, right? And it sort of just helps folks understand that, you know, you're not a fly-by-night product shop, and you know, you there's more care to just even the code that goes out there, but the overall branding experience, connections between things. Because listen, if again, a great test sometimes when I use my plugin Conductor is I'll often sort of start looking at, like, you know, I'm not using it every day, right? Usually it's my developers who are in there using it. And I'm not often using it. But then once I go to a site that we built with Conductor and I start thinking to myself, sometimes I get jealous, right? You look at other sort of plugins. It doesn't have to be in the builder space. It could be anything, right? And you're looking at these other plugins and you're like, man, I wish I had that feature. I wish I did that too, right? Yeah. And then you go back and you use your plugin that you've specifically cut features out to not become overwhelming. And like with Conductor, I was working on our theme site, our Slocum theme site, and I just wanted to change the way that our help docs page looked. And I went from one column, I just hit the mic, I just went from one column to 2 columns in one click of a button. And I hadn't logged into the site to do anything like that in months. I hadn't really been using my plugin to build out a site probably in a month or so. And then when I went to do it and I made the change, I was like, damn, that was easy. I didn't even have to think about it. I didn't have to drag and drop columns and think about, is this going to break CSS? I just went 1 to 2. and I was like, wow, that's great. You know, and these types of decision makings that we do as product people sort of really help our end user in the long run. It's great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And I would enter for anyone who's a consultant or for anyone who's looking to get in this space, in my experience in WordPress, to do this right, and Matt, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this too, but to do this right, it is a long game. There are plugins that, yes, you see them in the repository. They have tens to hundreds of thousands of downloads, and that's fantastic. If you notice at the time of this, there's been 30 plus installs. That's more than I was expecting when I first launched this thing. I honestly wasn't expecting much from this particular plugin, but I wanted to go ahead and get something out there. But the point that I'm trying to make is that for anyone who is out there looking at plugins, don't necessarily just use active installs as an indicator as to, is this thing just not that great? Because if it's a niche plugin, like Conductor, as you mentioned, for example, is those who want to change the front end of their site or the layout of their site, versus mine, who is tailored specifically towards those who blog regularly and get frustrated with the length of the excerpt field. There's just not going to be 100,000 people that are frustrated with the excerpt field.
Right.
I know that.
Right.
I'm happy with that. I'm not trying to make money off this plugin. So this is just to solve a very, very niche problem.
Sure. Yeah. It's a great sort of end to all of this. Is piece of advice is that, yes, in fact, if you are searching for a plugin, you know, while we do like to focus on the user reviews of WordPress.org, active installs versus downloads. It doesn't always tell the entire story, right? Especially in a plugin feature like this. And that's great stuff. Tom, do you have any other plugins that you use that you recommend for your specific audience for easier excerpts? So maybe there's a complementary plugin created by another company that you don't mind recommending as sort of a piece of advice to others.
Well, I do want to say that the majority of the plugins that I use, because of the nature of what I do, are largely based around development tools. But as a blogger, there are also a few things that I recommend. One of these is not necessarily a WordPress plugin. It's a service, and it's called Grammarly, and they have a browser extension that will allow you to, it actively checks the grammar and the construction of your sentences while you're writing. It's not without its bugs, but they do frequent releases, and it's constantly getting better. So if you're concerned about writing some of the best content possible, I recommend Grammarly and the browser extension. I know some people will draw comparisons with that and the other online editor, Hemingway. Hemingway is a great app, not knocking it at all. I have found Grammarly to be a little bit better than that. For those of you who
I hope you don't have to pay for mistakes, because I wouldn't be able to afford that.
No, you do not have to pay for mistakes. The other ones that I recommend. Okay, so if you are a blogger and you have a backlog of content, that is, maybe you've blogged for a year, whereas a year could be every day, a year could be multiple times a day, a year could be a couple times a month, whatever. Search WP.com by Jonathan Christopher is a fantastic plugin. What it does is it enhances the native WordPress search. So what this does is when people come to your site and they want to search for something like, I remember reading this at this site, but I remember just like a fragment of the sentence. WordPress's native search will rarely, it's hit or miss, but it'll rarely find the result. Search WP will 9 times out of 10 find it, and it gives you some granularity as to, hey, do I want to weight my posts higher, or do I want to weight my pages higher? So it'll allow you to kind of control what to search first. As far as caching is concerned, caching, that sounds so technical. Don't be dissuaded by that. There are 2 caching plugins I recommend. One is premium and one is completely free. And the gist of it is this: it just helps make your site faster. One of them is called WP Rocket, and it's 2 words, WP space Rocket. And it is one of the simplest yet most powerful caching plugins that I've used. I highly recommend it. If you don't have the coin to drop on your site, or maybe your site isn't generating revenue, however it is you manage your finances, the other one is called Simple Cache. All of these are Simple Cache is available in the WordPress plugin repository. You'll have to Google for WP Rocket. I don't remember the site.
I think it's WP-Rocket, but I'll certainly link it up in the show notes.
I think it's WP-Rocket.me, but yeah, look for it in the show notes. And then there's one that this is what I call an opinionated plugin. And I'm a fan of opinionated development. And by that, I mean, I love it when developers come in and say, this is how I think it should be. You should use, if you use this, this is how it will be. If you opt not to use it, fine. So you have a choice. Either I'm going to use it or I'm not going to. And if you opt to use it, then you're kind of implicitly saying, I agree with this opinion. And a developer by the name of John James Jacoby, known to some as JJJ, he has a plugin, part of his larger project called Stutter, which is for a story for another podcast. Maybe he could be on PluggedInRadio.
He is going to be.
Oh, fantastic. Guys and girls, tune in for that show. He is a fantastic person to follow on Twitter, fantastic person to listen to speak. One of my favorite plugins that he has, it's another extremely simple plugin. It's called Comment Humility. You can find it in the WordPress plugin repository by searching for WP Comment Humility. And what that does is it takes the comments menu and it moves it as a sub menu item under posts. So when you think about it, you think, well, what content on my site, on my blog, will have comments? And for many of us, it's just going to be our posts. If your pages have content, or if your pages have comments, then I would say maybe you're using pages wrong, but that's a conversation for a whole other podcast. But Comment Humility puts comments under the post menu, and I'm a fan of it because it's opinionated, because it's simple, and because it helps to, I think, tighten the cohesiveness between what you're publishing and how people are interacting with it. So search WP Comment Humility, WP Rocket, or Simple Cache, depending on whatever your budget is. All of those, in my opinion, help to improve your overall blogging experience.
Yeah, it's a great list. Definitely recommend all the ones that you mentioned. I know I use Search WP probably on every, well, not every site, but almost every site that we put out there that needs better search, of course. And WP Rocket's great. I mean, I make my site fly with that. So amazing stuff. Tom, where can folks find you on the web?
So right now, I am pretty much active on Twitter every day. You can find me at Tom McFarlin, McFarlin. I always have to spell my last name because my entire life people never have, other than my parents, and even they get it wrong sometimes. That's a joke. But I'm also at TomMcFarlin.com. And if you really want to get in touch with me, you can email me directly at TomMcFarlin.com. I try to respond to every tweet I get. And I definitely respond to every email I get unless it's spam. But so if you offer me an infographic to publish, you're going in the trash.
Oh God, yes.
But anyway,
yes, it is just, this industry is ripe for that. Oh God.
But I mean, I'm not on all the major social networks generally by choice. So that's where you can find me. If you're interested in my company, the Pressware company is at pressware.co. And then the plugin vertical of the business, which literally just started this year. It is, and when I talk about the long game, I mean, this is a long game. It's at presswareplugins.com. And we are just getting started with that. So I was actually working on the roadmap for that yesterday. So we'd love to hear from you. And unless you have anything negative to say, then
then just keep it to yourself. Great stuff, Tom. Thanks for doing episode number 1 of Plugged In Radio. Folks, if you're listening to this, hopefully I have actually published this stuff to iTunes. Although I might be previewing this episode just because it's the first one. I like to just sort of tease it out there. But hopefully by the time this is in your earbuds and you're hopefully downloading it from iTunes, that you go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. That would be amazing. You want to stay connected, you want to subscribe to the newsletter, head on over to PluggedInRadio.com. And by the time, hopefully by the time that you hear this, there is a new site sort of up and coming. I published a quick 2015 site or 2015 theme site, and I put a picture up there of Bill O'Reilly. Do it live photo, right? And a lot of folks thought that I was just joking about Plugged In Radio because of that graphic. Well, no, in fact, it's pretty much tells the tale of how I run every podcast. As Tom knows, we're just fiddling around with technical difficulties in the beginning, but hopefully we got it. And hopefully you like the new format. Once again, Tom, thanks for joining us over here at PluggedInRadio.com. Thanks.
Thank you.